Chapter 19 of D99 by H.B. Fyfe. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 19. It was 20 after 8 when Westervelt found himself back at the communications room with Smith. Rosencrantz had alerted them to a message coming in from Sissoko. They didn't expect to hit us during office hours, he explained. But as long as you're here, I thought maybe you'd like to get it fresh. Smith had told the girls to pass the word to Leidman and Parrish, and Westervelt had followed him down the hall with the feeling that he had displayed his eye under the good lighting long enough. Now they listened as a slim brown-haired man with a faintly scholarly aura completed his report on the escape of Louis Taranto and Harley Myers, spacers. Joe Rosencrantz was fiddling with an auxiliary screen and murmuring into another microphone. "So it was a rather close call, even though the formula you sent us appears to have worked perfectly," said the scholarly man. "I have not been able to determine exactly what caused the delay on the part of the Sissokans, since it seemed imprudent to display my little flying spy eye where it might be seen, or even damaged." "Maybe you can pick up some rumors in the future," suggested Smith. "If you do, we'd appreciate hearing them, to add to our file and make the case as complete as possible." The transmission lag was much less than that occurring with Trident. The DIR man on Sissoko agreed to forward any subsequent discoveries. "Those spacers you contacted are already heading out system," he told Smith. "I think they did a nice clean job. It was too bad that they were seen at all, of course. But it will be news to me if the Sissokans drop around with any embarrassing questions." "Well, there is a large foreign quarter there," Smith recalled. "Why should they suspect Terrans after all?" "Oh, they will. They will. They suspect everyone. But they must know so little that I feel sure I can bluff them. I can prove that I was here at the official residence all day." "Good," said Smith. "Just in passing, I take it that no one was much hurt." The man on Sissokan grinned briefly. "No one on our side," he said, "although I understand the prisoners were suffering some from exhaustion and dehydration. This Louis Taranto seems to be quite a lad. There is reason to believe that he killed 2 or 3 of his guards with his bare hands. At least I saw the burial party carrying bodies with them as they marched the rest of the way back to the city." Smith laughed. "I'll have to add a note opposite his name and contact him. I could use a field agent like that. Well, my operator tells me I have another call coming in. Thanks for your work on this." "A pleasure," said the man on Sissoko. "I really didn't expect to contact you directly. My relative time atlas must be a little old." "No, it's just that we never sleep, you know," quipped Smith, and signed off. He looked around, saw that it was Parrish who had entered, and added, "At least it looks as if we'll never sleep. I'm getting tired of it myself." "So is everybody except Joe here," said Parrish. "A con man isn't normal anyway." "You gotta learn not to let all this stuff coming through bother you," said Rosencrantz wisely. "If I soaked up all these crazy calls, I'd have nightmares every day. As it is, I'm as normal as anybody when I leave here." "You haven't been with us long enough," said Smith. "What else do you have there?" "There was a routine memo to make a check with the planet Greenhaven," said Rosencrantz. "I cleared it when a good time came. The DIR station there pretended not to know what I was talking about." "What?" yelped Smith. "Don't tell me we goofed on another one." "I don't think so," said Rosencrantz. "While you were talking to Sissoko, a spaceship named Vulpecula called. Said there was reason to believe the Greenhaven DIR was locally monitored. Tapped or the scrambler system broken," said Parrish. "What does this ship want to talk about?" "The Ringstad case." "Joe, goddammit, who says you're normal?" demanded Smith. "I bet we sprung another one. 2 in one night. We're coming out with a good average after all. Get them on the screen before I pop my tanks." Westervelt listened to the transmission from the spaceship. Without the help of a planetary relay at the far end, it tended to be a trifle weak and wavery, but the essentials came through. He left Smith and Parrish patting each other on the back and went back to tell the girls about it. They clustered around him in the main office, even Pauline leaving her cubicle for a moment and keeping one ear pointed at the switchboard inside. "You should have heard Smitty conning her out of writing us up for the news magazines," said Westervelt. "She seems to be pretty famous in her line." "What was she like?" asked Simonetta. "She looked blondish, but the color wasn't coming across too well. Not bad looking, in a breezy sort of way. The agent that sprung her had to skip too, because he thought the Greenhavens, they called them Greenies, had spotted his disguise." "Oh boy," breathed Pauline. "The cops must be hot on their trail." "Either that, or he wanted to go along with her for other reasons," said Westervelt. "They seemed kind of chummy." "Can they do that?" asked Beryl. "I mean, without orders and all that?" Westervelt grinned. "I don't know," he admitted, "but he's doing it. He can't go back now. Anyway, Smitty simmered down fast and promised a draft for expenses would be waiting for him when the ship made planetfall. Technically, the DIR ought to pay, because it turns out the guy is on their rolls and was only working with us temporarily." Simonetta nodded wisely. "You watch our boss," she predicted. "He'll have this man on our lists. He always gets free with money when he sees a good prospect from the main branch. Even if they stay in the honest side of the outfit, they cooperate with the back room here." Smith walked in with Parrish, beaming. His eyes found Westervelt. "Willie," he said, "make a note, and tomorrow look up the planet Rochin 2. I had to send credits, and I didn't want to say into wide space that I didn't know where it is. Bad for the department's prestige." He looked about genially. "I see you've told the news," he commented. "It was a lift for me, too. We haven't done too badly after all. 1-2, lost 1. Damn, and 1 is still a stalemate." "Anyone tell Bob?" asked Parrish quietly. They all exchanged searching glances. Smith began to lose some of his ebullience. After a moment, he turned to Pauline. "Buzz his office," he said in a preoccupied tone. Westervelt tried to subdue a mild chill along the backbone as Pauline gave Smith a wide-eyed look and slipped into her cubbyhole. He couldn't have phoned downstairs, he assured himself. Pauline would say all the lines were busy, or cut off or something. But what if he looked out a window? Smith had sauntered over to her center desk, where he waited beside the phone. It seemed to be taking Pauline a long time. "Check with Joe," advised Parrish. "Then try around the other rooms. 10 to 1 he's in the lab." "Has anyone seen him in the last half hour?" asked Smith. Westervelt pointed out that he had been in the chief's company in the communications room. The girls had not seen Leidman, but admitted that he might have gone past in the corridor without their having noticed. "Yeah, he doesn't make much noise," Parrish agreed. Smith had a thought. He moved toward his own office, paused to jerk his head significantly toward Parrish's, and opened his own door. Parrish went over past Beryl's desk and thrust his head into his own office. Leidman was not in either room. "Mr. Smith," called Pauline in a worried tone. "I'm sorry, but I can't seem to reach him." "Oh, Christ," said Parrish. "He isn't talking again." He did something Westervelt had never seen that self-possessed man resort to before this evening. He began to gnaw nervously upon a knuckle. He saw the youth staring and snatched his hand from his mouth. Smith glowered unhappily at the floor. Westervelt thought he could hear his own pulse, so quiet had the office grown. The chief backed up to the unpleasant decision. "We'd better spread out and wander around until someone sees him face to face," he said. "If he wants to be let alone, let him alone. Just pass the word on where he is." Westervelt volunteered to go down one wing, while Parrish took the other. As they left, cautioned to take their time and act natural, Smith was telling the girls to open the doors to the adjacent offices again, and keep their ears tuned, in case Leidman should come looking for him or Parrish. Westervelt turned right past the stairs and went to the door of the library. "It will be perfectly natural," he told himself. "We made out on 2 cases. I just want to tell him about it, in case he hasn't heard. Why the hell don't they get that cable fixed? They want their bills paid on time, don't they?" He could hear the newscasts now, about how tough a job the electricians faced, and how tense was the situation. Westervelt decided he would not listen. He opened the door to the library casually and sauntered in. The pose was wasted. Leidman was not there. Westervelt went on to the conference room on this side, and found it empty as well. He looked in on Joe Rosencrantz, who, from the door, appeared to be alone. Just to leave no stone unturned, he retreated up the hall to the door marked "Shaft," and poked his head inside. He had to grope around for a light switch, and when he found it, was rewarded with nothing more than the sight of a number of conduits, running from floor to unfinished ceiling. A little dust drifted down on him, from atop the ones that bent to run to outlets on the same floor. "Well, nobody can say I overlooked anything," grumbled Westervelt. He went back to the communications room. Rosencrantz was listening in on some conversation from a station on Luna that was none of his business. "Any sign of Leidman around here?" asked Westervelt. "Not since the Yolene brawl," grunted Rosencrantz. "That's a good-looking babe running that lunar station. Why can't we dig up some messages for them?" "I'll work on it," promised Westervelt half-heartedly. He walked quietly around the corner past the power equipment. No Leidman. The next step was the laboratory. He looked at his watch, then leaned against the wire mesh partition for a good 10 minutes. Let Parrish cover the ground, he decided. In the end, with no sign of Parrish or Leidman, he opened the door and stepped into the dark laboratory. He made his way cautiously ahead, thinking that Leidman was probably in his office. Feeling his path with slow steps, and carefully avoiding the possibility of tipping over any of the stacks of cartons, he had progressed to the center of the large chamber when the lights went on. Westervelt felt as if he had jumped a foot, and the blood pounded through his veins. Gasping around with open mouth, he finally met the eye of Pete Parrish, who stood half inside the doorway to the corridor, his hand still raised to the light switch. They both relaxed. Parrish smiled feebly, with less than normal display of his fine teeth. Westervelt contented himself with passing a hand across his forehead. It came away damp. "Well," said Parrish, "where was he?" Westervelt closed his eyes and groaned. "You're kidding," he said. "Please say you're kidding." "It's too late in the day to fool around, Pete." Parrish looked alarmed. He strode forward, letting the door close behind him. Westervelt, finding himself shivering in a draft, went to meet him. "I'm not kidding at all," said Parrish. "Did you look everywhere? Are you sure?" "I even poked into the power shaft," retorted Westervelt. "Were you in his office?" "Naturally. I checked everything, even the men's room." They had wandered back to the corridor door, peering about the laboratory to make sure no one could have concealed himself on the floor under a workbench or behind a pile of cartons. Parrish opened the door, and they stood puzzling at the empty hall. "He wasn't even taking a shower," said the elder man. Westervelt brooded for a moment. "Did you say everywhere?" he insisted. "Well, everywhere he would have any call to go." They stood there, passing the buck silently back and forth between them. At length Parrish said, "I'll just look again in his office and the other two rooms, in case he was," and slipped out behind me. Westervelt watched him run lightly up the hall to each of the doors. Parrish's expression, as he returned slowly, was something to behold. "I'll go," said Westervelt grouchily. Parrish put a hand on his arm. "No, that wouldn't look natural. I'll phone Smitty to send one of the girls down." "Better phone him to send two," suggested Westervelt. "Yeah," agreed Parrish. "That's even more natural. Watch the hall while I buzz them." He went into Leidman's office. Westervelt leaned in the laboratory doorway, feeling depressed. After some delay, he sighted Simonetta and Beryl turning the far corner with their pocketbooks in hand. Neither one looked particularly pleased, but their expressions lightened a bit at the sight of him. "You there, Pete?" murmured Westervelt. "Right at the door," whispered Parrish from inside Leidman's office. The girls clicked in muffled unison along the hall. Beryl paused at the entrance to the ladies' room. She raised her eyebrows uncertainly at Simonetta. The dark girl threw Westervelt a puzzled shrug, then pushed past Beryl and went inside. The blonde followed, almost on her heels. Westervelt waited. When he thought he could no longer stand it, Parrish hissed, "How long are they in there, Willie?" "I don't know," said the youth, "but maybe we'd better—" The door opened. Simonetta and Beryl walked out, staring quizzically at the two men, who had taken a few steps toward them. "What is this gag?" asked Simonetta. "There's no one in there. Who would be in there?" Parrish swore luridly, and none of them seemed to notice. "It can't be," he exclaimed. "You're sure?" "Of course we're sure," said Beryl. "What if the power came on and we didn't notice?" mused Parrish. "You know him better than I do," commented Beryl. "I'm beginning to wonder, from what you told us on the phone, if he jumped out of a window somewhere." "I know it's a terrible thing to bring up." Westervelt stopped listening to her. He was remembering the draft he had felt, twice now, in the laboratory. End of chapter 19.